Welcome to the Ripples of Perception series. I'm Lisa Hayes.
I'm Iva Nasr.
We're so excited you're here joining us because just as casting a pebble into a pond creates ripples, so do we as we go through life.
Please stay with us through the series as Lisa and myself, in each segment, share a variety of stories, downloads, and experiences that enrich our understanding of perception.
Are you ready to get started?
More than ready. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Iva.
It's been a little while.
It seems like it.
We have each had some very special things happening in our lives as life and everyday life continues to
Yes.
do its thing.
Yes. Never a dull moment. Miracles after miracles in a lot of ways.
And in between the miracles, new HVAC units being installed
And having to deal with the mundane things like, landscaping,
yes,
trying to find the right landscaper, just money. Who cares, right?
I have to tell you, we have been on a roll with this series, Ripples of Perception. And for a few months now, even, I think now, we've put out several of our conversations, and I personally, I know you've shared with me as well, just amazing feedback.
Yeah.
So it's been such a joy. And we are, as you and I talked a little while ago, we're going to take a breather.
No pun intended, right?
No pun intended. The listeners didn't see the little wink I gave you. We're going to take a breather, a pause, because we have some very special happenings, each of us in our lives, some changes, some travels, which will set the tone for more special experiences that we're going to have within our work, within our service, within just the evolution of time and space and family. So I'm really looking forward to the next few seasons of 2023 and to be continued for sure, one way or another. The ripples will continue. Do you agree?
I do. Yes. We never know what's around the bend. And except we do know miracles are around the bend. And our life experiences is what this series is all about. And yeah, we're going to have quite a few to catalog and discuss. That'll be really, I think, amazing that we don't even know what's going to happen, but we'll have a lot to share next time we come online.
And dear listeners, for those of you who have listened to some of our conversations, or those of you who are just now tuning in, please go to Lisa's YouTube channel and catch up on some of those. And every time we shared a conversation on whatever intuitive topic, we always felt that each one could be a sequel to another conversation. So the content is there, and we will continue to allow those seeds to blossom with each other and with you. So on that note,
On the breather note,
on the taking a breather note, today's topic is about the breath and breathing, from the most basic and obvious benefits of breath to the more mind-bending, mind-blowing, phenomenal experiences that we have through the breath, okay? I'm not reinventing the wheel here by any means, and I'm sure that there are some listeners who could easily educate me in a magnified way to work with the breath. I do have a handful of experiences, though. Of course, breath is first breath when we come into this life, last breath when we take that courageous last breath. So it's spirit, it's the embodiment of spirit in our human experience. And then throughout that life, between the first and last breath, multitude of experiences that we have with breathing. We can use controlled breathing in a medicinal way to help release the tight waves of anxiety, or to breathe into pain to the extent that we can have no pain just by breathing into certain blocks or whatever the body is holding. For example, exercise, aerobic. Aerobic means with breath. Okay. Of course, breathing for meditation and focus, vital to breathing with mantras, and that is another example. Breathing when we're in the quantum energetics kind of equations of working between dimensions and realms and the potentiality of energy, well, to go into pause and neutrality that allows that equation to do its thing. Breath and focus is in there too. Singing, voice lessons, one of the main things, right? In voice and singing, the control and the use of breath. Swimming, you get the idea.
Yeah, I used to swim laps all the time until I was concerned about the chlorine. And I feel like I got a lot out of that with the breath.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know this is what I'm sharing is hardly it's hardly a complete list of where breath is first and foremost. It's vital.
Right. And my playing the flute, I took up back in spring of 2012, or no, it was spring of 2011. And at first I was just playing it all the time, and it was real high because it's breathing in and then breathing out.
Exactly. And I mean, currently I am also working on refining a few things within my body, and have reconvened with a certain style of physical training. And I requested that the focal point to anything I do, any movement, whatever weights I'm lifting, whatever I'm doing, to work through the breath. And it's within seconds, a lot of times, I feel the positive ripples of what that does in, for example, focusing on that point in my abs and not tensing my jaw and causing tension in my shoulders. Just those little reminders to breathe and channel the breath to certain areas, which then helps with my ambidexterity and my balance and my awareness of what else I'm feeling in the rest of my body. So just those benefits alone make the journey between the first breath and the last breath so much more meaningful and creative and phenomenal. So there's also, which is where this conversation for us today gets even juicier, and where I love to exist on a daily basis and working on bringing that constancy back into my life. And that is when we have an experience around breath and energy through a magnetic field that engages beings and phenomena beyond our three-dimensional experience. And last conversation you and I recorded, I'm pretty sure, was a parallel earth of money and time. Staying within that theme of a parallel earth, I want to bring this conversation on breath and breathing
Mm.
within that umbrella. I have the landmark story in my life so far around breathing, amongst so many other powerful moments, but this one still has me reeling for more answers.
Mm.
And that was my swim with the dolphins in Kihei, Hawaii. Many layers to this story that I will not cover in this conversation today. And actually, listeners who have followed Lisa and myself in our conversations, it's come up before. And it's a story I share in my book as well. So pardon me, listeners, if this is repetitive. However, the focus on breathing. So dolphins, in the more metaphysical observation of these creatures, represent a lot of times in the study that borders maybe on spiritual presence of their manifestation on this earth and in our waters, has to do with mana, the breath, because a dolphin has to consciously surface to breathe. And those who do not surface to breathe, a lot of times, from my understanding, it's intentional. It's when they're ready to let go and release themselves from this life. So that was my motivation many, many years ago for a sabbatical that I gave myself when I was a massage therapist and I went to Hawaii. It was to study the breath. Around that time, I was learning it myself and bringing it to my clients. And I thought, what better than to go and have an experience with the dolphins? Fast forward, long story short, I ended up on a swim with the dolphins on their terms. And I followed my intuition that day to go one direction while the group I was with and the kayaks were going another direction. So the mystery started in that moment where I went right and everyone else went left. Point being, I'm not an advanced swimmer by any means. I had my snorkel on. I followed a shadow underwater. I thought it was just a big fish. Before I knew it, I was in the belly, it seemed like, of a pod of, let's say, 24, 30, 36 dolphins. I forget the exact number right now.
I would love to do that.
Lisa, like I said, so many layers. What I want to impress in this conversation, and I really don't want to go much further than to say, I started with them close to shore, and I was transported. I couldn't believe that I was in the midst of this pod of dolphins, and I'm swimming along underwater, of course, completely immersed. And at some point, I noticed one of them was starting to surface, and I thought, it's going to take its breath, which is wrapping up my sabbatical. It was just the day or 2 days before I was going to get back on the plane to come back to the mainland. And so I got excited and I surfaced to watch it leap and come back in. Well, once I surfaced, my rational mind kicked in, and I thought, almost with a gasp, oh my gosh, when was the last time I took a breath? How long have I been underwater? Had no concept of time and space. And this is where a parallel Earth experience gets highlighted. Well, I started off at shore with them. And when I realized that I had not taken a breath until that point, I was smack in the middle of the ocean with no landmark in sight.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I don't know, mile over mile, I have no idea, but definitely way beyond what I ever was able to do in holding my breath while I was swimming, whether it was in the ocean or laps in a pool. I mean, most of the time, maybe 4, 5 strokes, and you tilt your head and take that breath and keep swimming, right? For example, or maybe, the length of a pool, you swim underwater and then come up, take a breath and go back in, right? Well, this was completely unbelievable to my brain, to my perception of what I'm capable of doing or not doing, the elasticity of my lungs, that breath that was either given to me or my own potential with breathing, whatever it was, left this permanent impression and permanent invitation to me of what our potential is, what the possibilities are. And right now we're talking about the breath. And it's not like I was actually energized. I wasn't out of breath. I was energized, but went for, I'm going to say, about a mile without having to surface. There's so much more to the rest of the story. I'm not going there. I want to hear what your impressions are, and I know that you have an experience to match this one as well.
Well, my goodness, my impression, Iva, every time you tell me this story, I hear new things. And the one thing I heard this time was, I guess I didn't grasp how long you were actually underwater without a breath. How does that happen? And I agree with you. It's like we've got to be in a different reality, a different parallel earth in order for that to manifest that way. And you didn't even know you hadn't been breathing, because it wasn't until you noticed and were marveling over the dolphin going up for air that you thought you'd just go up and watch him. And then, I mean, you weren't even thinking about breathing then.
No.
It's amazing. Then you go up, and then once you put your head above the water, it's like you're in another reality again. And you're probably in a state of shock. Like you can't see land. You realize you hadn't been breathing for a long time. I can't imagine, but what a miraculous, once in a lifetime, once in a lot of parallel lifetimes experience. This is amazing. So from the breath standpoint, I mean, we know that in this reality, in this parallel earth, we have a earth rule that in order to exist here, we have to breathe. And if we don't take our breath, the first breath, we can't be here. And we have to continue to breathe. And what's so interesting about this conversation is that we don't have to remember to breathe. Yet you forgot to breathe and you didn't care about it.
And the dolphins, I was in their, call it magnetic field. I was in their influence. I was existing on their terms.
Yeah.
So they can go much further than probably the average human being without taking a breath. So I followed their rhythm,
their lead, and you were in their frequency.
Yes.
And you tapped into their world, a parallel earth, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
A parallel ocean.
The parallel ocean. Phenomenal. And that's, I think, the point we're wanting to make here is that the breath is a portal to parallel realities and parallel frequencies that we might and can tap into. And we're doing that more and more. I mean, we've talked about this on this series. It's just what we're wanting to say today is that the breath can facilitate the deprogramming of our human condition. It can facilitate the cleansing of the emotional charges that we no longer want to play with. We can send those out into another field where they can be transmuted and go back home. So this breath work is, and there are lots of modalities out there, different kinds of breath works that we invite the listeners to explore on their own. It's an expedited way to elevate our awareness to tap into the higher frequencies. And your intention by going to Hawaii was that you were on a sabbatical to learn more about the breath and the magic behind the breath. And the universe delivered.
Oh, yes. Cherry on top.
Cherry on
Just
top.
hours before getting back on the plane. Yes. Speaking of planes and travel, I know you have a story to share.
Yes, and to keep this within our little 30 minutes, I guess I better get to that. So, yes, 2 years ago, around this time, in March of 2021, I went to Egypt. I actually went at the end of February for a 2-week journey to Egypt. And I kind of went on the spur of the moment. I signed up with a cancellation in January, and then the next month I'm on the plane, crossing the pond. And I land in Cairo, and boom, boom, boom. The next thing I know, I'm doing this and doing that. And I'm in front of Sekhmet, who is the Egyptian lion goddess. You can look her up, Sekhmet. I've talked about her before in this series. So just like Iva, if this is a repeat, maybe there'll be some new things that you'll hear that I haven't even thought about talking about. Anyway, I'm in front of Sekhmet at the Ptah Chapel in the Karnak Temple in Luxor. And I introduced myself to her. We couldn't talk in that little Ptah Chapel. It was a very small room, like 8 by 8 feet. And we couldn't talk, we couldn't tone. So as I stood in front of her, and she's a life-size statue, I started to realize, and I didn't ever really do breath work, but I was doing breath work in front of her. And I won't go into the details of that. And I also was saying something in my mind with the breath work. And the next thing I know, I am having a heart activation.
Heart.
Oh, heart activation. Yes. And you were the one, when I talked about this after I got back, you're like, Lisa, the way you were doing it with your hands and what you were saying, it was a reciprocal thing.
During the experience.
Yes.
Itself.
Now, I can't speak for her. However, I know what happened for me. My heart was going boom, 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 boom. And I was on a high. And I walked out of that chapel and I'm like, what just happened? It was a beautiful experience. My heart it was vibrating physically, boom, 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 and everything. So the day after, we were still in Luxor, and I had the privilege of being coached by a lady from Zurich, Switzerland. And you can go on my YouTube channel and find that 2-hour interview with her, Dela Catadol. And it was 2 years ago in like March of 2021. You can scroll and find it. And her picture's on the screenshot, and so is mine. So maybe that'll be helpful. And you'll see the timeline. I have it broken down, and you can actually scroll to quickly punch on where we talked about this experience and get a little more of the details of what she does. Anyway, the breath work that she offered us free of charge on this beautiful lawn at this wonderful resort in Luxor was for 2 hours. And I'm like, what? 2 hours? That was beyond whatever I could imagine doing. And, 5 minutes maybe, right? Mm-hmm. So there I am with about 20 other people lying on a little cloth or whatever. And she's going around coaching everyone as needed. And she said that everybody has their own, to paraphrase, human condition breath. Mm-hmm. And that when you do breath work, and what she coaches is that it's not going to be the same breath that she wants you to do. It's based on how to deprogram ourselves.
That is key.
Is that amazing?
Yes.
So like somebody might she might coach somebody to get into a slow in and out breath, another person a real fast breath. It kind of evolves naturally, and she just watches and observes and then coaches. And then after about 5 minutes, it takes over and you could do it for hours, she said.
I was going to say, you invoke the breath and then the breath takes over with its own intelligence.
It does. It was crazy. So she said, not to earmark me as special or anything. I don't want to say that. It's just that when we do this, there are gifts to be had. And she said in all of her times of doing this with clients, she only had one other person that she felt received the gift, which was some kind of energy, I guess. And after about an hour, literally, it took me over and I was vibing.
Hour of breathing. You breathe this way intentionally for an hour. Whoa.
I was supposed to do it for 2, but she said that you're already there. And because I was anyway, everybody's different. And so I was gyrating, I was moving, I was like, I was like, I almost couldn't control my body. I was lying down, but I was moving up and finally sat up, put my hands up, and I could feel energy flowing out of my hands 3 feet or more. Okay. I mean, like, seemingly 4 or 5 feet, but we'll just say conservatively at least 3 feet. How does that happen? And so I went back home and researched and found out that Sekhmet activates the heart. And then if you're lucky, that energy flows through your hands and outward. So yay, Sekhmet.
And the exchange you had with Sekhmet, the visual that I have right now is of an infinity sign between you and her. And in the way you demonstrated to me, the hand gestures and the breathing in and out, the exchange back and forth. Even when we were together on our hike and you were telling me the story after you got back from Egypt, you were standing in front of me and gesturing, demonstrating what you experienced. And it nearly activated my heart. And that's when I felt that it wasn't just you receiving, but that you also, unbeknownst to you, an even more special gift amongst the others that you have was being re-encoded, reignited. I felt like you were giving her and through her whatever realms she's connected to. I don't want to embellish this too much, but it just was such a tangible experience for me, even on that walk with you, that it's a continual, magnified, powerful exchange that got started and continues.
Yeah, and even though it was an ancient statue, it seemed to embody her, similar to the dolphins.
Exactly. Beings, messengers, sources of inspiration, potential, phenomena, all of it. We have access to all of these things.
And why don't we do it more often?
The reminder today, at the least, and I know you have more to share, the breath, just the breath.
Right.
We have everything through the breath.
We do. And we need oxygen. That's one of the rules in this realm. And the oxygen, when it goes into the cellular structure through the breath work, I don't even want to say work, but through the breath systems that are modalities, we're energizing those cells and raising the frequency, I'm assuming somehow. And then you just take off into the cosmos. So yeah, I think I feel incentivized based on what you were saying to share in a certain way with the listeners what exactly at the spur of the moment I did in front of Sekhmet. And you can see a visual of this if you want to go back to the Dela Catadol interview, like I said, 2 years ago in March of 2021. And so like, if you can just visualize praying with your hands, have your hands like your thumbs are touching your chest, okay? And then I was just directed to then put my hands out so that my palms faced her, and then bring them back to in a prayer mode to my chest, and then out facing her back to the chest, clasped like a prayer. And as I did that, I breathed out when I put my hands out toward her. I breathed in when I brought my hands to my chest in the prayer mode. And I said at the same time, I love you when I put my hands out. You love I when I put my hands in. Of course, I was saying it in my mind because we couldn't talk in there.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So
So
telepathic
yeah.
exchange.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I know it's supposed to be I love me, but I used the I in both instances because I wanted to be synchronized there.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah, there are no grammar rules in moments
right.
like that.
It's in parallel earths. That's the extent of it, really. There's no way to describe it, right?
Mhm.
I think we just have to experience.
Mhm.
We have to allow ourselves to experience the magic of the breath.
Absolutely.
What I feel the breath does when we focus our attention and intention in that way, we allow ourselves, as I alluded to earlier, to deprogram all the human conditioning and to remove the obstacles that have been in place through the eons that have been hiding our true nature of divine purity and love.
Mhm.
And so the breath just is a way to move that out, kind of similar to if our window is tarred over, all of our windows in our house, how are we going to ever know the beauty of outdoors until we start cleaning the windows?
Yes.
The outdoors, the outdoor beauty is always there. It's just we don't see it until we clean.
So the breath is part of the mechanism of that windshield wiper
Yeah.
that clears the view
Yeah.
and clears so much more
Right.
than just the view.
Yeah. It just moves all that out so that we enjoy who we really are.
I've witnessed and participated with my mother, age's relative. However, the point is that this is accessible to anyone, and it's never too late to engage the breath. My almost 85-year-old mother has been using the breath during the day, but especially at bedtime, and doing certain exercises like the hummingbird breath and this and that and the other. And in front of my own eyes, I witnessed from at bedtime to waking up in the morning, along with other modalities like the imprinting that you've taught her and so many other things, but just the use of the breath has been transformative in her healing.
Oh, I love that. And if you're listening and thinking, I just don't have the time to research this or learn this, what I've been doing the last few weeks, something I forgot to do, and I was doing it for a while, and I started doing it like 2 weeks ago every morning. So it's now after I do my meditation, I do this before I rise. And it is a technique that someone told me about, and I don't know where it originated from. You could probably go online and find out more information. I don't even know what the name of it is, but literally what it is only 5 breaths.
Okay.
While you're lying down in bed still, before you rise, you point your toes and stretch your head up. Okay. So you move your head back. Okay. So that your neck is exposed. So you're stretching your toes and arching your neck at the same time. And then you contract, you bring your toes in
And you
and
tuck
you,
your
and
chin.
you tuck your chin. Now, while you do that, you can guess that while you're expanding, you are breathing out. And while you're contracting with your head tucked in and your toes pointed inward, you are breathing in. So if you just do that 5 times, it's supposed to help with your adrenals and your endocrine system and all that. It just, I'm amazed at how much better I feel just after those 5
Just
breaths.
that. And I love the reminder you're sharing. It doesn't have to be an immersion in study or understanding the mechanics of breath or even getting into the more phenomenal experiences. Just the reminder today that we're sharing with everyone to breathe a little bit more consciously, to reawaken the expansion and the potential of the breath beyond just the programmed instinct to keep breathing because we just do it automatically. However, to invite the expansion and to make sure we're not constricting that potential. Just that reminder again, just to be aware of the breath. And with the exercise you just shared, that alone, I feel like we've offered the biggest gift ever to each other and to our listeners.
Well, that put a smile on my face. I've been smiling this whole time though. So thank you, Iva.
Lisa, still to be continued,
To be continued.
even with a pause.
Mhm.
We're just going to find a new breath
Mhm.
and see what's next.
That's right.
And Lisa, thank you for being so generous in sharing your YouTube channel, and what an archive of amazing conversations, including the Dreams for Society series we did, and all your interviews and your work on that channel is truly a treasure chest. So thank you. And in that light, definitely to be continued.
To be continued. Thank you.